The distress signal, the merchant vessel. Silver dawn drifted through the cosmic void like a wounded whale in an endless ocean. Its hull, once gleaming with the characteristic violet sheen of Velani craftsmanship, now bore scorch marks from repeated plasma strikes. Inside the command deck, Captain Lyrix pressed her six-fingered hand against the navigation console, her iridescent skin flickering between shades of blue and gray, the colors of fear and determination mixing in her species' unique emotional display. The Velani were traitors by nature, their entire civilization built on the principle of peaceful exchange. They had traveled the stars for 3,000 years, never once firing a weapon in anger. Their ships were marvels of engineering, designed for speed and cargo capacity, with shields meant only to deflect space debris and solar radiation. They had never needed more. Until today, another explosion rocked the Silver Dawn, and Lyrix watched helplessly as her cargo bay decompressed, sending precious medical supplies meant for the colony on Kepler 442b spinning into the void. The Skorath raiders had found them in the neutral zone, that stretch of space between the Galactic Council's jurisdiction and the unknown territories. The raiders moved like a pack, 6 ships working in perfect coordination, each one taking turns to strike and retreat, wearing down the merchant vessel's defenses bit by bit. Lyrix's first officer, Vertex, stumbled to her side, his skin cycling through rapid orange pulses, the Velani equivalent of panting. His left arm hung useless, broken when the last impact had thrown him against a support beam. The medical bay had been destroyed in the first attack, leaving them with no way to treat injuries. They were dying slowly, and everyone knew it. The Skorath were everything the Velani were not. They were pirates, scavengers who had rejected the Galactic Council's laws and made their living by taking from others. Their ships were ugly things cobbled together from stolen parts and salvaged weapons, but they were effective. They knew how to hunt, how to isolate prey, and how to kill without mercy. The Silver Dawn had broadcast its peaceful intentions, had offered to share its cargo, had even tried to negotiate safe passage. The Skorath had responded by targeting their communication array, cutting them off from any help. Captain Lyrix made a decision that went against every instinct her peaceful species possessed. She activated the Universal Distress Beacon, the signal that would broadcast their location and situation to every ship within 100 light years. It was dangerous, potentially drawing more pirates or hostile species to their location, but they were already dead if they did nothing. The beacon erupted from their ship like a scream in the darkness, racing outward at the speed of light, carrying with it automated translations in over 10,000 languages, including the mathematical baseline that any spacefaring civilization could understand. The signal rippled through space, reaching diplomatic vessels that were too far away to help, reaching Galactic Council patrols that were engaged elsewhere, reaching independent traders who immediately changed course to avoid the danger. But it also reached something else. It reached the human patrol fleet stationed at the edge of known space, where they maintained their voluntary exile from the Galactic Council's politics. Fleet Commander Marcus Rodriguez was reviewing supply manifests in his ready room aboard the battlecruiser Prometheus when the signal arrived. He was a veteran of 30 years, his hair gone gray from the stress of commanding humanity's forward fleet, his brown eyes carrying the weight of decisions that had saved lives and ended them. Humans had only been spacefaring for 2 centuries, babies compared to most galactic civilizations, but they had earned a reputation that made even ancient species nervous. Earth was a death world, a planet where evolution had created an arms race of survival that produced creatures capable of thriving in conditions that would kill most sentient species instantly. Humans could survive injuries that would be fatal to others, could endure temperature extremes that would cook or freeze their galactic neighbors, and most disturbing to peaceful species, they had evolved as persistence predators. They would chase prey for hours, days if necessary, never stopping, never resting until their target collapsed from exhaustion. When humans had reached space, they had brought that tenacity with them. Their ships were not the most advanced, but they were built to last, to fight, to endure punishment that would cripple more sophisticated vessels. Their weapons were kinetic and nuclear, primitive by galactic standards but devastatingly effective. Most importantly, humans had something most species had evolved beyond: the capacity for controlled violence and the wisdom to know when to use it. Rodriguez read the distress signal twice, his expression hardening with each word. Peaceful merchants under attack, medical supplies being destroyed, no weapons to defend themselves. His decision came without hesitation, the product of human evolution that had taught his species to protect the weak, because the pack was only as strong as its most vulnerable member. He activated the fleet-wide communication system, his voice carrying to every human ship in the patrol group. The message was simple and direct, the way human military communication had always been. 6 ships immediately responded, their captains ready without needing explanation. This was what they trained for, what they lived for, not the violence itself, but the chance to use their strength to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. The human fleet consisted of the battle cruiser Prometheus, 3 destroyers named Vendetta, Resolute and Defiant, and 2 corvettes, Swift Strike and Silent Hunter. Together, they represented enough firepower to glass a small moon. But more importantly, they carried 600 humans trained in combat, each one capable of continuing to fight even when wounded, each one carrying the legacy of a species that had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. As the fleet prepared to jump to faster-than-light travel, Rodriguez studied everything they knew about the Skorath. The raiders were known to the Galactic Council, but they operated in spaces where the Council's authority was weak. They were cruel but not stupid, choosing targets that couldn't fight back, avoiding any confrontation with species that might pose a threat. They had never encountered humans before, had never faced a species that had evolved on a world where everything, from the weather to the microscopic organisms, was trying to kill them. The preparations took less than 10 minutes, a speed that would have amazed most galactic civilizations who needed hours or days to coordinate such movements. Human military doctrine emphasized rapid response, born from a history where the difference between life and death was measured in seconds. Every crew member knew their role, had drilled it thousands of times, could perform it even if the ship was burning around them. As the fleet aligned for the jump, Rodriguez sent one final message to his captains. The words were picked carefully, designed to remind them of their purpose without inflaming their natural aggression. Humans had learned the hard way that their capacity for violence needed to be controlled, directed, used as a tool rather than a solution. They were going to save lives, not to conquer or destroy. The distinction mattered, especially when dealing with species that already feared humanity's reputation. The jump to faster than light was violent by galactic standards, the human ships tearing through space with brute force rather than the elegant sliding that more advanced civilizations used. But it was fast, incredibly fast, crossing distances in hours that would take others days. The human fleet raced toward the distress signal, toward the Silver Dawn and its dying crew, toward the Skorath who had no idea what they had summoned from the darkness. In the command center of the Prometheus, Rodriguez stood surrounded by his bridge crew, men and women who had volunteered to serve at the edge of known space, far from Earth's blue skies and green fields. They were the descendants of hunters and warriors, of survivors and protectors, and they carried that heritage in their bones. The tactical display showed their approach to the battle zone, the numbers counting down with mechanical precision. The Silver Dawn was still transmitting, though the signal was weaker now, systems failing as the Velani ship died slowly. The Skorath were still there, 6 predator ships circling their prey, taking their time, enjoying the kill. They didn't know that human ships were bearing down on them at speeds that defied their understanding of physics. They didn't know that Earth's children were coming, bringing with them the fury of a species that had learned to channel its violence into protection, its aggression into justice. As the fleet approached the drop point, Rodriguez gave his final orders. The rules of engagement were simple: protect the merchant vessel, neutralize the threats, and try to take prisoners if possible. The last part was important. Humans were trying to prove to the galaxy that they were more than the savage Deathworlders that rumors painted them as. They were trying to show that evolution on a hostile world had taught them not just how to fight, but when to fight and when to show mercy. The Deathworlder intervention. The human fleet erupted into normal space with the violence of a thunderclap, their emergence sending gravitational ripples that every ship in the area could feel. Commander Rodriguez stood at the center of the Prometheus's bridge, his eyes scanning the tactical display with the practiced ease of a predator assessing a hunting ground. The scene before them was exactly what the distress signal had described. 6 Skorath raiders circling the dying Velani merchant vessel like vultures around a carcass. The Skorath ships immediately detected the new arrivals, their commanders no doubt scrambling to identify these unexpected guests. The raiders had grown comfortable in their dominance of this region, accustomed to prey that fled or begged, never fought. The configuration of the human ships would be unfamiliar to them, angular and aggressive, built for function over form, bristling with weapons that looked primitive but promised devastation. Rodriguez didn't give them time to think. Human military doctrine emphasized speed and aggression, striking before the enemy could adapt. His voice cut through the bridge with sharp clarity as he issued rapid-fire commands that sent his fleet into action. The destroyers Vendetta and Resolute peeled off to flank the enemy formation from above, while Defiant moved to cut off any escape route toward the nearest jump point. The corvettes Swift Strike and Silent Hunter accelerated to attack speed, their smaller profiles making them harder to target as they closed distance. The Prometheus itself moved forward like an ancient battleship, steady and implacable, its main guns tracking the largest Skorath vessel. Rodriguez could have opened fire immediately, could have destroyed at least 2 raiders before they knew what was happening. But he held back. There were rules even in war, conventions that separated soldiers from murderers. He opened a communication channel on all frequencies, his message broadcasting in galactic standard and accompanied by mathematical proofs of its meaning. His words were simple and carried the weight of absolute certainty. The Skorath were ordered to cease their attack immediately and surrender, or face the consequences. They had 10 seconds to comply. It was more mercy than the raiders had shown their victims, more chance than they deserved. But it was what separated humans from the monsters they were capable of becoming. The Skorath response came not in words but in action. The lead raider, a ship cobbled together from stolen parts and marked with the scars of countless raids, turned its main guns toward the Prometheus and fired. The plasma bolts were powerful enough to punch through most civilian shields, hot enough to melt through standard hull plating. They splashed harmlessly against the Prometheus's military-grade barriers, designed to withstand direct nuclear strikes. Rodriguez felt no anger at their choice, only a cold satisfaction that they had made the decision clear. The 10 seconds expired, and he gave a single word that unleashed humanity's evolved capacity for violence. The human fleet opened fire with coordinated precision, demonstrating why Earth's children were feared across the galaxy. The Prometheus's main railguns accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, tungsten rounds that carried enough kinetic energy to shatter asteroids. The first round struck the lead Skorath ship center mass, punching through its shields like tissue paper and continuing through its hull, leaving a hole large enough to fly a shuttle through. The ship didn't explode. It simply ceased to be a functioning vessel, venting atmosphere and bodies into space as its structure failed catastrophically. The second and third rounds found their targets with similar effect, turning predator ships into expanding clouds of debris. The destroyers engaged with their own weapons, mixing kinetic strikes with nuclear-tipped missiles that bloomed like small stars against the raiders' shields. The Skorath tried to return fire, their plasma weapons and laser arrays lighting up space with deadly beauty, but they were firing at ghosts. Human ships moved with a coordination born from thousands of hours of training, each vessel covering the others, their point defense systems creating overlapping fields of protection that swatted down incoming fire. The corvettes demonstrated why humans had earned their reputation as persistence predators. Swift Strike and Silent Hunter didn't simply attack. They pursued, hounding a fleeing Skorath vessel with relentless determination. Every time the raider tried to jump to FTL, one of the corvettes would fire an interdiction pulse, collapsing the jump field before it could form. Every attempt to hide behind debris or use the merchant vessel as cover was countered by the corvettes repositioning faster than the Skorath pilot could react. Inside the Skorath ships, panic was spreading like wildfire. These raiders had built their reputation on attacking the weak, on choosing victims who couldn't fight back. They had never faced a species that treated war as a science, that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of combat. They had never encountered humans, who could track multiple targets simultaneously, who could fight while injured, who would pursue an enemy until one of them was dead. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted less than 4 minutes. 3 Skorath ships were destroyed completely, their debris fields expanding in slowly cooling clouds. 2 had been disabled, their engines destroyed with surgical precision, leaving them helpless but with life support intact. The sixth had tried to flee and was currently pinned between the two corvettes, its captain broadcasting surrender in 17 different languages. Rodriguez ordered the ceasefire, and the human weapons fell silent as suddenly as they had spoken. The immediate threat was neutralized, but the mission wasn't complete. The Silver Dawn was still dying, its Vailani crew in desperate need of assistance. The commander turned to his medical officer, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, whose team had been preparing since they received the distress signal. Chen was typical of human medical personnel, capable of healing with the same intensity that soldiers brought to fighting. Human medicine had evolved on a world where injuries were common and often severe, where the difference between life and death was measured in minutes. She had already prepared 3 shuttles with medical teams and emergency supplies, ready to board the merchant vessel the moment it was safe. The shuttles launched from the Prometheus, racing toward the Silver Dawn with escort fighters protecting them from any potential threat. As they approached, the extent of the damage became clear. The merchant vessel was bleeding air from dozens of breaches, its engines completely offline, its power grid failing section by section. The Vailani inside had perhaps an hour before complete system failure. The first human to board the Silver Dawn was Corporal James Thompson, a combat medic who had volunteered to be first through the airlock despite the risks. He moved through the damaged ship with practiced efficiency, his enhanced suit protecting him from the failing atmosphere while his medical scanners identified survivors. What he found made even his battle-hardened heart ache. Vailani crew members huddled together, their iridescent skin flickering with the pale colors of approaching death. Many injured, all suffering from oxygen deprivation. Thompson immediately began triage, his training taking over as he prioritized the most severe cases. His translator worked overtime, converting his reassurances into the musical tones of the Vailani language, telling them that help had arrived, that they were safe now. Behind him, more humans poured through the airlock, bringing portable life support units, medical supplies, and, most importantly, hope. Captain Lyrix watched through fading vision as these strange bipedal creatures swarmed through her ship. She had heard of humans, had been told they were dangerous, that they came from a world so hostile that it bred monsters. But the being that knelt beside her, checking her injuries with surprising gentleness, didn't look like a monster. It looked like salvation. The human medic injected something into her arm, and suddenly she could breathe again, the oxygen-carrying solution compensating for her damaged respiratory system. Within an hour, the Silver Dawn was stabilized. Human engineers had patched the worst breaches, restored partial life support, and even managed to bring one of the backup generators online. The wounded were being treated with a combination of human and adapted Vailani medical techniques, the humans having downloaded and absorbed the entire Vailani medical database in the time it took to board the ship. It was this adaptability, this ability to learn and adjust in real time, that made humans so formidable. Rodriguez himself came aboard once the situation was secure, wanting to meet the captain they had saved. He found Lyrix in what remained of her ready room, her skin now showing the swirling patterns of recovery. Through the translator, their conversation was stilted but meaningful. She thanked him for answering their call, for risking his ships and crew to save strangers. Rodriguez's response was simple, but carried the weight of human philosophy. The strong had a duty to protect the weak, and no one should suffer at the hands of predators if someone could prevent it. The aftermath of the battle spread through the sector like ripples in a pond. The Skorath raiders who survived were taken prisoner, their fate to be decided by Galactic Council law. The Silver Dawn was towed to the nearest human outpost for repairs, its crew treated with a level of care that amazed them. Stories began to circulate among the trade routes and space stations, stories of the Deathworlders who had answered a distress call, who had destroyed pirates with terrifying efficiency, but had also shown mercy and provided aid. The Vailani, as a species, had always believed in the power of peaceful interaction, in the possibility of civilization without violence. The humans had shown them something different but equally valuable, that sometimes violence was necessary to protect peace, that strength could be used to shield the innocent rather than exploit them. Captain Lyrix would later testify before the Vailani High Council, her skin shimmering with the colors of deep conviction as she argued for a formal alliance with humanity. The impact went beyond just the Vailani. Other peaceful species in the sector began to reconsider their views on humans. Yes, they were dangerous, Yes, they came from a death world that had forged them into apex predators, but they were also protectors, using their evolved capacity for violence to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. The same traits that made them fearsome in battle made them invaluable as allies. Rodriguez filed his after-action report from the bridge of the Prometheus, watching as the repaired Silver Dawn prepared to continue its journey to deliver medical supplies, now under human escort. He knew that this incident would have consequences, that it would change how the galaxy viewed humanity. They were still Deathworlders, still the children of a hostile planet that had taught them to be dangerous. But they were proving that danger could be directed, that evolution's harsh lessons could be transformed into something noble. The human fleet remained in the sector for 3 more weeks, their presence alone enough to discourage any other raiders from attempting similar attacks. Word spread through the criminal underground that this region was now under human protection, and the message was clear: prey on the innocent here, and face the wrath of Earth's children. The Skorath, what remained of their organization, fled to more distant territories, carrying with them stories of ships that couldn't be stopped, of soldiers who wouldn't give up, of a species that had turned survival into an art form. As the Prometheus finally departed the sector, heading back to their patrol route, Rodriguez received a message from Earth's diplomatic corps. The Galactic Council had formally recognized humanity's action as a legitimate peacekeeping operation. Several species had petitioned for human protection in their trade routes. The Velani had offered to share their advanced shield technology in exchange for a mutual defense pact. Humanity was no longer just the feared Deathworlders lurking at the edge of civilized space. They were becoming something more, something the galaxy desperately needed. The universe was vast and full of dangers, populated by species that had evolved in countless different ways. Some had evolved toward peace, developing past the need for violence. Others had evolved as predators, taking what they wanted through force. Humans occupied a unique position: predators who had chosen to be protectors, warriors who fought for peace, Deathworlders who used their strength to preserve life. They were dangerous, yes, but they were beginning to prove that sometimes the galaxy needed dangerous friends. The story of the Silver Dawn's rescue became legend among merchant vessels, told in 100 different languages across 1,000 different worlds. When ships found themselves in danger, when pirates threatened and help seemed impossible, they would send out their distress signals with a new hope: that perhaps the Deathworlders would hear them, that Earth's children would come racing through the void, bringing with them the promise that had echoed through human history, that the strong would stand for the weak, that predators who hunted the innocent would face justice, and that sometimes, just sometimes, the monsters in the dark were actually guardian angels in disguise.